Imagine losing your wife, and then deciding to recreate her. Not with a statue, not with paintings, but by taking a living person, and forcing them to become her. This is not fiction. In ancient Rome, Emperor Nero committed one of history's most disturbing acts of identity theft, turning a teenage boy into the ghost of his dead wife. And the Roman elite applauded. Year 65 AD. The Roman Empire is at the height of its power. Nero is emperor, charming in public, monstrous in private. When his wife Poppaea Sabina dies suddenly, history records two possibilities. Either she died from illness, or Nero kicked her in a fit of rage while pregnant. But whether it was guilt, grief, or madness, Nero's obsession with Poppaea didn't end with her death. It took a darker turn. The wheels of power turned slowly, but they turned nonetheless. Months after Poppaea's tragic demise, whispers began to reach Nero's inner circle. His network of spies, ever vigilant, were tasked with keeping their ears to the ground, ferreting out any information that might be of interest to the emperor. They scoured the city, from the opulent villas of the patricians to the crowded tenements of the plebeians, seeking any tidbit that might catch Nero's attention. And then, the news arrived, carried on hushed tones and delivered with a mixture of trepidation and excitement. In the labyrinthine streets of Rome, there lived a beautiful teenage boy named Sporus, a youth of unparalleled grace, whose features possessed an uncanny resemblance to someone Nero knew all too well. And to Nero's utter shock, the reports were true. This Sporus, he looked exactly like the late Poppaea. The resemblance was so striking, so unnervingly perfect, that it sent a shiver down the emperor's spine. Was it a cruel trick of fate? A phantom conjured from the depths of his grief? Or something more? For most people, this would simply be an eerie coincidence, a strange quirk of genetics, a fleeting moment of uncanny recognition. They might remark on the resemblance, perhaps even gossip about it for a day or two, before moving on to the next sensational rumor. But Nero was not most people. He was an emperor, a man accustomed to bending reality to his will. For Nero, this was an opportunity to defy death, to cheat fate, to resurrect his beloved wife. Not in spirit, not in memory, but in flesh and blood. A chance to recapture the happiness that had been so cruelly snatched away from him. But this twisted desire would come at a terrible price. And so, Sporus's nightmare began. A nightmare woven from imperial obsession, fueled by grief and madness, and destined to forever alter the course of his young life. He was but a pawn in Nero's twisted game, an innocent caught in the crosshairs of the emperor's insatiable desires. Nero orders Sporus to be taken to the palace, brought before him like a prized possession. There, within the palace walls, shielded from the prying eyes of the Roman populace, a horrifying transformation was set to begin. Under imperial command, the most skilled physicians in the empire were summoned, their expertise demanded for a task that defied both nature and morality. They were ordered to perform surgery castration, to prevent him from becoming a man, to halt his natural development, to forever preserve his delicate, feminine features. This was not just a physical mutilation, a brutal violation of Sporus's body. It was the first agonizing step in erasing his identity, in stripping him of his manhood, in transforming him into something else, something that would fulfill Nero's twisted fantasy. From this day forward, Sporus was no longer allowed to dress as himself. He was forced to wear Poppaea's royal gowns, the very garments that had once adorned the empress herself. He was draped in her jewels, the glittering symbols of her power and status. Even her makeup was applied to his face, transforming him into a living, breathing imitation of the woman Nero had lost. Nero, lost in his delusion, began calling him Poppaea. The name echoed through the palace halls, a constant reminder of the emperor's madness and the young man's stolen identity. Sporus was gone, replaced by a phantom, a living doll crafted to appease Nero's grief-stricken heart. The transformation was complete, but the nightmare was far from over. But the cruelty didn't end with mere appearance. Nero, in his infinite depravity, orchestrated a far more insidious form of torment. He trained everyone in the court, from the highest-ranking senators to the lowliest servants, to treat Sporus exactly as if he were the Empress Poppaea returned from the dead. Every gesture, every word, every interaction was meticulously crafted to reinforce this grotesque illusion. Imagine the psychological impact on Sporus, forced to live a lie of such magnitude, constantly reminded of the woman he could never be, the position he could never truly hold. This wasn't just about dressing him up, it was about systematically dismantling his identity. At public events, the charade reached its zenith. Sporus was forced to sit beside Nero on the imperial throne, a symbol of ultimate power and authority. He was introduced to foreign diplomats, ambassadors from distant lands, and visiting dignitaries as my wife, the Empress of Rome. These introductions were delivered with a flourish, a theatrical performance designed to shock and awe, but also to humiliate Sporus on a global stage. The weight of the empire, the gaze of the world, all focused on this young man forced into a role he never chose. If Sporus ever refused to play along, if he dared to break character or show any sign of resistance, the punishment would be swift and unthinkable. He was, after all, at the mercy of the Emperor of Rome, a man known for his capriciousness and cruelty. The power dynamic was absolute, the threat of violence always present. Sporus lived in a constant state of anxiety, knowing that a single misstep could lead to unimaginable consequences. His every action, every word, was carefully calculated to avoid incurring Nero's wrath. He was a prisoner in a gilded cage, his life a performance dictated by a madman. Then came the final, most depraved act in Nero's twisted play, a culmination of his madness and a testament to his absolute power. In a grand public ceremony, meticulously planned and lavishly executed, Nero married Sporus. The event was attended by the entire Senate, the cream of Roman elite, and a host of foreign dignitaries, all forced to witness this grotesque spectacle. The wedding was a mockery of tradition, a perversion of sacred vows, and a profound insult to Roman sensibilities. Yes, the emperor himself, Nero, resplendent in gold and purple robes, the very embodiment of Roman power, personally placed a wedding veil upon the head of Sporus. The young man, a castrated boy, was dressed in the elaborate finery of Poppaea, his face pale and drawn. Nero then declared him his lawful wife, his empress, in a voice that echoed through the assembled crowd. The act was a final, devastating blow to Sporus's identity, a complete and utter subjugation of his will. The crowd cheered, not because they approved of this unholy union, not because they celebrated the emperor's choice, but because in Rome, opposing the emperor, even with a disapproving glance, meant certain and agonizing death. Their applause was a desperate act of self-preservation, a hollow echo of loyalty masking their true feelings of horror and revulsion. The silence would have been deafening and deadly. And so, for the next few years, Sporus lived a life of gilded captivity. He was paraded as the Empress of Rome, draped in silks and jewels, a symbol of Nero's absolute power and twisted desires. Imagine the weight of those garments, the suffocating feeling of being constantly observed, judged, and used. He was a prisoner, not of stone walls, but of societal expectations and the whims of a mad emperor. His every move was dictated, his every word scrutinized. The lavish lifestyle was merely a facade, masking the profound loss of agency and the deep-seated trauma he endured. He existed in a world of opulent confinement, a beautiful bird trapped in a gilded cage. The Roman court, a viper's nest of ambition and intrigue, whispered behind silk curtains and gilded pillars. The people, ever fickle and easily swayed, gossiped in the marketplaces and bathhouses, their voices hushed with a mixture of fear and fascination. They spoke of Nero's excesses, his cruelty, and his bizarre relationship with Sporus. Yet, despite the murmurs of discontent, no one dared to openly defy Nero. The consequences were simply too dire. His power was absolute. His reach extended into every corner of Roman society. To challenge him was to invite certain death, a fate few were willing to risk. The fear was palpable, a heavy blanket stifling any potential rebellion. Roman historians, figures like Tacitus and Suetonius, meticulously recorded this extraordinary and disturbing story in their chronicles. They didn't dismiss it as mere rumor or court gossip, but presented it as documented fact, a testament to the depravity and decadence of Nero's reign. Their accounts, though filtered through their own biases and perspectives, offer a glimpse into the reality of Sporus's life and the societal context in which it unfolded. These historical records serve as a chilling reminder of the abuse of power and the enduring impact of trauma. They ensured that this dark chapter in Roman history would not be forgotten, a cautionary tale for future generations. In the year 68 AD, the foundations of Nero's tyrannical rule began to crumble. His extravagance, his paranoia, and his increasingly erratic behavior had alienated even his most loyal supporters. Rebellions erupted in the provinces, and the Senate, emboldened by the growing unrest, finally found the courage to act. They declared Nero a public enemy, stripping him of his power and condemning him to death. the news spread like wildfire through Rome, igniting a mixture of jubilation and trepidation. The end of Nero's reign was at hand, but the future remained uncertain, fraught with political instability and the potential for further bloodshed. Facing the inevitable consequences of his actions and the prospect of a humiliating public execution, Nero chose to take his own life. He fled Rome, seeking refuge in a villa outside the city walls, and there, with the help of a loyal servant, he ended his reign of terror. His death marked the end of an era, a period of unprecedented excess and brutality. But for Sporus, it was not the end of his suffering, but merely the beginning of a new chapter of torment. The nightmare, far from being over, was about to intensify. For Sporus, Nero's death might have initially sparked a flicker of hope, a fleeting glimpse of freedom after years of captivity. Perhaps he dared to dream of a life free from exploitation and abuse. But that hope was quickly extinguished. The political turmoil that followed Nero's demise created a power vacuum, and two of his successors, driven by similar desires and a callous disregard for human dignity, also laid claim to him. He was forced to endure the same degrading role, passed from one master to another, his body and his identity subjected to the whims of powerful men. The cycle of trauma continued, trapping him in a seemingly inescapable nightmare. Finally, in the tumultuous year of 69 AD, amidst the chaos of civil war and shifting allegiances, Emperor Vitellius, a man known for his gluttony and cruelty, decided to stage a particularly grotesque spectacle. He planned to humiliate Sporus publicly in a gladiatorial arena, forcing him to participate in a mock wedding show, a cruel parody of marriage designed to mock and degrade him before a jeering crowd. The arena, filled with bloodthirsty spectators, would become the stage for his final humiliation, a public display of his stolen identity and forced servitude. Faced with the prospect of yet another performance, another act of degradation in the unforgiving glare of the arena, Sporus made a final, defiant choice. He refused to be a pawn in their power games any longer. He chose death over dishonor, reclaiming control over his own destiny in the only way he could. He took his own life, denying his tormentors the satisfaction of further exploiting him. In his final act, Sporus displayed a profound sense of dignity and resilience, a refusal to be completely broken by the horrors he had endured. His tragic story serves as a stark reminder of the human cost of unchecked power and the enduring strength of the human spirit in the face of unimaginable adversity. In the ruins of history, Sporus is often just a footnote in Nero's biography. But his story is more than imperial gossip. It's a reminder of what happens when power has no limits, and human beings become objects for the amusement of rulers. Ancient Rome is remembered for its grandeur, but also for its cruelty. And sometimes, the most disturbing crimes are not the ones committed in secret, but the ones committed in front of an entire empire.